Okay, today I have a really, really special interview. Anthony Ruggiano Jr., who everybody knows from his famous interview on VladTV, and was also a former member of the Gambino crime family. What's up, Ant?
What's up? How you doing? Looking forward to this. I've been
Thanks.
waiting a while. I know we had to cancel the last time I had the COVID. I was sick.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
COVID.
sick. Yeah,
Oh,
I
that
was sick.
sucks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, shit happens. No big
Yeah,
deal.
what are
You
you
know what
gonna
I
do?
mean? It
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke to Wade because you were supposed to do the football thing with Wade.
Yeah, I was sick. I was sick that whole week. Yeah, I was sick.
Yeah. So since we brought it up, why don't we talk about that? There's a podcast, YouTube channel called Crime and Punishment. No, Crime and Entertainment. I'm sorry, Crime and
Right.
Entertainment. And you do like sports picks
Yeah,
with
we do the bookmaker and the bettor.
Okay.
So he's the bettor, I'm the bookmaker because lucky me, I went to prison a few times for bookmaking. And he likes to bet. So so we kibitz. He's a bettor, I'm a bookmaker, and I try to tell him, everything's get up for the bookmaker. The gamble is really today we talk about. Today, a gambler has more of an opportunity to win than in my day because of all the stuff on the internet. There's a lot more information out there.
Yes.
A lot more programs where you could analytics, a lot more analytic stuff. We didn't have access to that back in the day. There was no internet. So it was all, everybody had to just study on their own. I mean, there was sharp guys in Vegas, but it's a different game today. And we talk about that. And we talk about, like my father, to keep it simple, when I was a kid, when I started, the first time I made a bet with a bookmaker, I was about 16. Mm-hmm. And my father found out that I was betting but I was betting $25 parlays, kid stuff. And my father sat me down, I remember, and he asked me a question. He says to me, "So I heard you're betting with a bookmaker." I said, "Yeah, me and my friend Larry," his father calls the bets and frisks. He goes, "Well, let me tell you something. Let me ask you a question." He says, "Who drives the Cadillacs and who drives the shit boxes?"
Yeah, that's the truth.
So, yeah, that's exactly what he said. So I says, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, let me tell you." He goes, "The bookmakers drive the Cadillacs and the gamblers drive the shit boxes. So now, what do you want to be? You want to be a bookmaker or you want to be a gambler?" So that's so he gives us he makes his picks, and we talk about the lines and how the lines sucker people in, and it's pretty informational. It's just two different takes on gambling.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. All right, good. Yeah, Wade is a great guy. As a matter of fact, the way that I got you to come on is through Wade, because Wade put me in touch with Pasquale and so on and so forth.
Right.
And we've been kind of like podcasting like info back and forth, trying to help each other.
Yeah, that's great.
So pretty much everybody, unless they are under a rock and don't watch YouTube, has seen you on the VladTV interview. And my opinion was that I think it got such a good response, in my opinion, is because you were so honest. Like, you were very, very down to earth. Mm-hmm. And whatever question he asked, your answers were direct, honest, and accountable. Right. And so why don't you talk about like that experience? Because that really put you on the map.
Yes. Well, when I decided to do this, I decided to do this, I just made it. I just said to myself, listen, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be honest. My life's going to be an open book. I'm not going to make stuff up. I'm not going to put myself in situations I weren't in. I'm just going to tell the truth. I'm going to tell the story, my life stories, and I'm just going to try to be as I'm going to be honest. And I think because I'm being honest, it comes across that way because I'm not making anything up. So this is me. Vlad reached out to us, and he tried to get me a little excited. He was trying to get me, and I was ready for someone. He interviewed someone before that, a friend of mine, and he said, he's going to try to get you angry, but I don't get angry because it's the truth. He tried to get me angry about, my cooperation with the government. And I explained to him that to me, that was a process. Mm-hmm. That was a year-long process. It was the toughest decision I ever made in my entire life. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot out of me to do that, and I explained it to him, and I think it came across, really well because of, because it was the truth, basically. basically, and yeah, and it did put me on the map. I'm getting a lot of feedback. It's got a lot of views, and he did his job. He did his homework, and I've been in recovery. I don't know if you know. So a process in my life was, I to try to change my life. I had a confidant and I spoke to them. So I'm pretty much an open book. I testified at a lot of trials. So I'm not embarrassed of what I did. Mm-hmm. So for me, that I think that comes across too. That's why I could talk about it. I'm regretful over a lot of stuff I did, but I'm not embarrassed it happened. I can't go back and change it. So when I'm asked a question, I answer it.
Okay. Well, let's actually get into that. So you were basically born into this mafia life. Your father was Fat Andy, who was the capo in a Gambino crime film. Is that right? He was a capo?
He was in a Gambino crime film. So yeah, he got straightened out in 1953, the same year I was born.
Okay.
And I was born into it. His partner Tony Lee used to babysit for me. Wise guys literally raised me. They were always in my house. There was always a lot of guys in and out of my house. My father started taking me around with him when I was a little kid, and I knew he was getting treated special. I didn't know why at the time, but I knew there was something different about him than other people's fathers and even my own uncles. And, so I always knew there was something different. I just didn't know why. And then when I got a little older and I branched out off my block, and I started hanging out by the neighborhood pizzeria, the older kids, when I would walk up to the corner, the older kids would whisper, "That's Fat Andy's son," and then I learned about the mob, that he was a wise guy and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was literally born into it. My godfather, my father was raised by wise guys after his father passed away. My grandfather passed away, and my father was only 6 in 1932. So my father was raised also by mob guys. His two best friends, their uncle, one's uncle and one's father were in Murders Incorporated. Wow. So my godfather, Lenny Dodone, his uncle was Happy Mayoni. He was a member of Murder Inc. And my other father's friend, Larry Abendando, his father was the Dasher. He was in Murder Inc. So that's the houses my father grew up in.
So your father grew up in East New York, is that right? Correct. And that's where the majority of the guys from Murder Inc. were from. Am I accurate?
Exactly right. The Jewish guys and the Italian guys, both of them were from Bronzeville.
Okay. And if for people who don't know, why don't you explain exactly what Murder Inc. was?
Murder Inc. was a group of guys when Lucky Luciano formed the 5 families and formalized the commission, which was the crime commission of all the bosses and underbosses and other members of the mob throughout the country. When they came together, they formed a commission, and they decided that they needed a crew of assassins because they wanted to keep it sanctioned, and they wanted to keep it, they wanted one crew to do it because Hamas assassins, that brought a lot of heat. And they formed a group of guys that did basically all the homicides for the commission all over the country. These guys traveled all over the country. Albert Anastasia, before he was the boss of the family, he was the leader of Murder Inc. And he put together the crew. And it was a bunch of Jewish guys from Bronzeville, Abe Rellis, Lepke, and a whole bunch of Jewish guys. And then in East New York, it was Happy Mayoni, the Dasher, Garino, Pittsburgh Phil, the whole, and they committed murders for the commission. They were the hit crew for the commission.
All right. So your father grows up in this life, and he grows up in East New York, and he gets straightened out when in the 1953. You said
53, right? The books were closed. He was a special case because of what he did. He committed some homicides for Albert Anastasia. Albert Anastasia took a liking to him, and Charlie Wagons proposed him. And the books were closed. And being, of course, of what he did, they made it a special case, and they opened up the books and they straightened out my father in 1953, the same year I was born. So I was literally in it my whole life. It's funny because when I got sentenced in 2014, the judge asked me how long I've been associated with the Gambino crime family. And I looked at him and I said, since birth. And he thought I was joking, the judge. He looked at me, he went, since birth. The lawyer knew what I meant. And the lawyer said, no, Your Honor, since you're 16. But but the judge thought I was kidding, but I was dead serious.
Right.
When he asked me that question, I said, since birth. And then, he said, since birth. And then my lawyer chimed in and told him, no, Your Honor, since he's 16, which was officially when I started working for my father at 16. So, so I was born into it. That's all I knew. I got suspended from school at 16 and I went right to work for my father. And I did that my whole adult life. I didn't have a legitimate job till I was 50 years old.
Wow. Okay. All right. So now you're in. So your family moves from East New York to Ozone Park.
Right.
And Ozone Park is pretty much similar to the neighborhood that I grew up in. I grew up in Bensonhurst in Brooklyn, and it was all Italian at that point and plagued with mafia guys or mob guys and wannabe guys. And I always hated the wannabe guys, and they were all over the place, And some of them, I'm not going to mention any names, some of them slip through the cracks and wind up on big podcasts. So
we could probably guess who they are.
Yeah. That's was watching that one. I go, how did this guy slip through the cracks? I mean, I know like 10 guys that would say stuff like that, and you just shake your head. But okay. Anyway. So when you were growing up in Ozone Park, you went to work for your dad when you were 16. And what was the entry level like, if you will, for somebody who is in the mob life?
Well, at that point, when I got suspended from school, my father, I told my father I wanted to work for him, and he told me that working for him meant going to jail was all part of the job. I think he was trying to scam me a little bit, but at that point, I was so brainwashed, and I wanted in so bad that nothing really fazed me. So he put me to work. The next day, he took me to this club out in Merrick Road, and he put me to work in a blackjack game. So I started off really at the bottom of the ring. You know what I mean? Like he didn't. I wasn't a boss, you know what I mean? So he took me to this club in Merrick, Long Island, and this guy, Philly the Pimp, that was his nickname. I don't think he was a pimp. That's just what they called him. He might have been a pimp at one time.
Right.
His nickname was Philly the Pimp, and he had a nice club out in Long Island, and he had a blackjack game, and I went to work in there, and I really didn't do nothing. I hung around. Then it turned into a poker game, and then I was dealing poker. And, then I went to work in a dice game. This was before the casinos. And I worked in the dice game, and I would get paid every day. And then I started writing numbers, and I started out like all the guys back then started out. You know what I mean? I started writing numbers. Then my father took me to the Ravenite. He started introducing me to people and telling me who was who and what was what. That guy's a captain. He introduced me to Neil Della Croce. He was the underboss. He took me to the Raven, introduced me to Neil. I met Neil's son, Buddy. I started hanging out with him. Him and I became very, very close friends. I met his daughter, Tony. Her and I became very close friends. I started going to weddings with him. And I started making money, and I started going to the Copa. I started hanging out in clubs in Manhattan. At 17, 18 years old. And I started selling cigarettes. I started doing whatever the mob does. We had our hands in everything. I was selling untaxed cigarettes. I was selling porn movies, 8mm porn movies. I was writing numbers. I had a half sheet. I was booking sports, and I was just learning the ropes. I was having bar fights. Now I'm hanging out in bars, even though I'm underage. I'm Fat Andy's son, so nobody's proof for me. I'm going in bars. I'm hanging out in bars. I'm going out with older girls. I'm 17. I'm going out with girls that are 24, 25 years old because I had money. I would take them to the Copa. It was great.
Yeah, let's talk about that because on Vlad TV, he likes to talk about the murders and the trial and the investigation and so on and so forth. But the one thing that attracts young kids, not so much anymore, but back then, and even when I was a kid, who attracts the lifestyle of the mob is the money, the girls, the cars, the clout. So why don't you go into how real was that with the money, the cars, the girls, the clout, or was it just something that it was looked better from the outside looking in?
No, for me, it was definitely real. It was great. That's what hooked me. I mean, that was part of what hooked me. The nightlife was great. I went anywhere I wanted. I had a credit, I had money in my, listen, I'm 17, 18 years old, and I'm making $100 a day. That was great. That was crazy big money.
And what year was that?
70, 71.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, that, you know, you're talking that's big money. I would go. So I'm 17, 18. I walk in a bar, right? And there's a gorgeous 24-year-old barmaid working behind the bar. I'm walking in, I'm ordering a drink. I'm leaving her a $10 tip, a $20 tip. She's like, oh my God. And then I'll tell them, you know, like it happened. I would say to them, what are you doing Friday night? Nothing. You want to go to the Copa? Come on, you can't get into the Copa. Do you want to go to the Copa Friday night? Yeah, I want to go to the Copa. I said, meet me here 8 o'clock Friday night. I would meet them 8 o'clock Friday night, and I take them to the Copa. Mm-hmm. It was great. You know, no lines, never waited online, got in the best clubs, front row seats. You know, we had all the ticket brokers, you know, just pick up the phone, say, listen, I want to go see Phantom of the Opera tonight. I want to go see it. Boom, front row seats. It was very attractive, very glamorous, you know, great clothes. We went in clothing stores. We had the run of the place. It was just, it was very, very exciting.
And you know, women love the whole bad boy, mysterious thing to a fault sometimes. I mean, you know, to a point where you wind up marrying a guy who's a complete shithead, right? Yeah. But they love that lifestyle. I mean, the bikers, the prison guys with the neck tattoos, the mafia guys, they love that shit.
You know, I'm not saying it was a good thing. You know, we all had wives and we all had girlfriends. I mean, we had girlfriends that knew we were married. They loved being with us. They got treated great. They went on great vacations. We took them to Miami. We had great hotels, living in suites in the Fontainebleau. I mean, going to the best restaurants, nightclubs. They loved it. And our wives, you know, they knew who we were. You know, and they just like bad boys, I guess. I don't know what it is, but I never had an issue with
it. It was a different society. It was a different world back then. Yeah. Back then, women understood that men were men, and they were going to have girlfriends. Even if, like, my father wasn't a mafia guy. I mean, he was a contractor. You know, he was an electrician, and him and all his friends had girlfriends. Yeah. It wasn't a mafia thing. No. I mean, it was, but even the regular guys did it. And as a matter of fact, my father told me that when he was growing up, if you were married and didn't have a girlfriend, guys looked at you like you were an idiot, like you were.
They thought something was wrong with you. Yes, it was so crazy when John Gotti became the boss. When John Gotti became the boss, I used to go out with him to clubs because he used to love to go to clubs at night. Regimes, Club A, Pastels in Brooklyn.
Pastels, yeah, sure.
Right. So one night. So I used to love to go out with him because everybody thought he was like a celebrity. And he had groupies. I mean, so I was in Pastels with him one night and we were in the back, in the VIP section at a long table. It was all guys. It was me, John Gotti, Tony Lee, Pete Gotti, this guy Bobby, the Jew. He wasn't Jewish. That was just his nickname. And Ronnie One Arm was with us. A whole bunch of guys. We were all at this table. And I'm walking and the disco Pastels is mobbed.
Yeah.
And everybody's looking because he's sitting back there. And I'm walking and there's all these gorgeous girls. And I'm going up to them and say, come on, you want to meet John? And they would say, and I would bring them up to the table and I would sit them at the table around all of us, right? So one night I was doing it and John and I was sitting here. So John was sitting here. I was sitting here. Tony Lee was sitting here and Pete and Ronnie one of them. And John leaned over to me and he goes to me, there's enough girls at the table. Stop bringing girls here. I said, all right, he didn't get mad. He just was, breaking my voice. He goes, is there enough girls here now? You want to stop bringing them over?
Yeah.
And that's just, they just love being with us, even to this day.
You know what's funny? Yeah, absolutely. You know what's funny is that my father, my brothers, I'm the youngest, and my oldest brother's 14 years older than me, and we're from Bensonhurst. And then years later, we moved to Staten Island. But it was like, basically Bensonhurst with a pool in your backyard, right?
Yeah.
And they always kept me away from it. They always said, don't go near those guys. Don't go. I remember there were places where my mother would yell at me in Brooklyn, don't go over there. You can't go. You're not allowed to go over there. And then when I got older and I was in my late teens, early 20s, and I started going out, I would go out to the places in Bay Ridge in Brooklyn. Yeah. And all the girls just wanted the gangsters, the wise guys, the wannabes, and I'd be so pissed off. I'm like, why?
Well, listen, one thing about mob guys, we know how to travel. You know what I mean? We know how to spend money. We know how to, we know how to travel. Listen, I was talking about that this morning on my podcast about, how we went to Broadway plays and we went to the good restaurants. We went to great concerts. I mean, I saw Elvis. Listen, I saw Elvis Presley. I saw Frank Sinatra. I saw every Beatle, but not together. I mean, saw so many great shows. The first time I saw Frank Sinatra, I was a kid. I was 19 years old. I remember like it was yesterday. I was 19 years old. I was in the Ravenite with my father, and it was I think it was a Saturday or a Friday or Saturday. I'm in the Ravenite with my father, and this guy Greg De Palma walked in, who was friends with. He was a wise guy. Well, he was friends with Sinatra. This guy, he walks in and he goes in the back and he's talking to Arnel Della Croce, and then he leaves. Arnel walks out and he sees me, and he walks over to me and he goes, "Hey, Anthony," he goes, "You have a girlfriend, right?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "You're going out with Alice Mayoni, right?" I married Happy Mayoni, the guy in Murder Inc. I married his niece.
Wow.
He goes, "You're going out with Alice, right? Happy's niece, right?" I go, "Yeah." He says, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "Nothing." He goes, "You want to go see Frank Sinatra?" I said, "Yeah, I want to see Frank Sinatra." And he goes in his pocket and he hands me 2 tickets for the Garden that night. And I went to see Sinatra with my girl sitting in the 3rd row. Wow. Sinatra was right in front of me all night.
Yeah.
Like it was just amazing.
Yeah.
How could you not want more of that?
Right. It's a very addicting lifestyle. Not, I mean, like I said, things have changed, not so much anymore, but at the time it was a very addicting lifestyle. But also, what a lot of people don't know is that, guys in the mob life, they didn't pay for anything. Everything was a favor. Is that accurate?
No, that's not. We paid. I mean, a lot of places we got favors. A lot of places we would go. Bartenders would let us drink for free. Yeah, we would do them a favor. They would do us, but we paid. There was like the Copa we had to pay. We paid the Copa. We paid our way, but a lot of times we didn't. We got treated well. Tickets for baseball games. We got let in to the Garden for free. We had guys on the take in the Garden. Yeah, sometimes we paid and sometimes we didn't. But with the times we didn't pay, we were doing other things for them.
Right.
And sometimes we were out and out shaking them down, which that was our job. Right. It all depended.
So now that we established that it was an addicting lifestyle with the clout and the women and the money and celebrities and so on and so forth, what actual street hustle, if you will, did you do to make money?
Oh my God, I did everything. I mean, in the 90s, I'll tell you, like the last time I was out there in the 70s, in the 70s, I worked. We had a number business. We were doing numbers. We had crap games. It like changed in the 80s. My father I was in Florida with my father. We had a Shylock business. We had an Italian restaurant. We were doing stuff down there. My brother had a big major pop business. My brother was dealing in a lot of marijuana, big time marijuana dealer. My brother was making serious money. But after 88, I was doing so many things. At one point I had 3 chop shops. We were chopping cars. I had a stolen car ring. I had a credit card fraud ring. I shook down a vendor. I took over a vending company. I had a sports business. We were working with the number business. My father had a major number business. We had our hands in everything, whatever we could do to make money. Listen, we committed crimes all day. I say it all the time. We pillaged and plundered. We stopped. Whenever my eyes were open, something was going on. Right, so I had a lot of things going on at once, and none, even if it was something legitimate, we turned it into illegitimate. Like I had a vending company. Yeah, some of it was legitimate, but most of it was all gambling machines. And then I had chop shops. I had a stolen car ring. I had a credit card. I was getting credit cards from the post office. We were banging out credit cards. I was making so much money. I was hiding it in the walls of my mother's kitchen. She was the only one that knew where it was.
Yeah, right. Did you have any business dealings or interactions with other members of other families, other crews, or so on and so forth?
Oh, yeah, all the time. I was partners with the Genovese crew and my vending company. They had 50%. We had 50% each. With this guy Myron, who was with them for 100 years with the Genoveses. I was partners with them. I did business with them. I did business with the Lucchese families. My father had crap games with Paulie Var. My father was very tight with the Varios. We did business with them in the racetracks with the crap games. I did business. We did business with everybody. You know, everybody. I was getting cars off guys from the Colombos. I did business with everybody.
Okay. All right. But you were never officially a made member. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I never actually had the ceremony. What happened was every time I was supposed to get straightened out, which is made, I went to prison. I mean, it's crazy. So in 89, I got arrested. I went to prison in 91. I got out in 92. And then Tony Lee had cancer. He got sick. He died.
Wow.
They proposed me. My father proposed me after Tony Lee died. My name went around, and it got all approved, and it was supposed to happen. And I got arrested again. I went to jail again for 8 years. So I went to jail again. While I was in jail, my father passed away. So technically, I was at that time with this guy Mikey Gal, who was Tony Lee's brother, who became my father's partner. But while I was in jail, Nicky Carrazza, who was a captain in the Gambino family, who my father straightened out, had me transferred to his crew.
Okay, that's what
so when I got out in 04, they proposed me again, and they sent for me, and my name went around to all, because when you get proposed, they put your name on a piece of paper, and they send it around to the 5 families in case someone wants to put a beef in and try to stop it or know something about you that, you know, nobody else, whatever, you know, and once it gets cleared, then you get straightened out. When that happened, Lenny DiMaria, who was another captain in the Gambino family, sent for me. Before that, they took me to a meeting because I was about to get straightened out, and they told me who got promoted to captain. They gave me the rundown of the whole family of who's who and what's what, because I had just gotten out of prison. So Lenny sent for me, and it's funny because he sends for me, right? I'll never forget. He sends for me in 04, he sends for 05, he sends for me, and he says, listen, everything's done. The word is out. You don't need any representation. If you got to go on any sit downs, you're allowed to go. You're going to get recognized as the wise guy. The only thing is we didn't have the ceremony yet, but if you know, you don't need to go with anybody, you could go on your own. Everybody knows that you could sit down for yourself. We put the word out. So it's like you're a wise guy, but we just didn't have the ceremony. A week later, the FBI arrested me.
Oh, God. Yeah.
A week later, I'm sitting in front of and that was the end. That's when I got arrested for the murder. A week later, I'm sitting in front of my son's house, and I got arrested by the FBI.
Oh, God.
It's like divine intervention. So basically, I just never had a ceremony.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say, technically, I was a proposed member of the mafia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there any animosity? Did you ever get like, oh man, you know, I really wanted that ceremony. I wanted to be on the street as a made man. Would you ever have any?
Well, what happened was, before I went to jail in 96, I was a little anxious to get straightened out. I was waiting for the ceremony, and I was waiting, and they were just doing it slow, and they put a couple of guys in before me. So there was a little, and my father got a little more annoyed than me, to tell you the truth, because he got a little more annoyed than me. Matter of fact, we went up to visit him, me and this Lenny DiMaria, who was a captain, and he told Lenny, like, what the fuck are they waiting for here? Let's get my son straightened out. And Lenny goes, we're working on it. It's going to happen, relax. But then I went to jail.
Can you explain what the ceremony consists of?
Well, it consists of you walk in a room, and there's all captains there, a boss maybe, or all captains and wise guys, and they ask you first if you know what you're doing there, and you're supposed to say, no, I don't. You know why you're called there, and you're supposed to say no, but everybody knows why they're there. And then they hold hands, they put a saint in your hand, and they light it on fire, and then they make you repeat an oath, that you're not gonna give them up to anybody, a martyr, and that you burn in hell. And if we call you, if your mother's on your deathbed and we call you, you come to us first. We're your family now. And my father took that literally. It's funny because the oath they say about, if your mother's dying, you come here first if we sent for you. And my father was a mama's boy. He was when he first got straightened out on Mother's Day, Albert Anastasia baptized a grandchild or something. There was some kind of baptism that Albert Anastasia was involved in. And my father had to go to the baptism because he was like on duty, you know, more or less. And he didn't see my grandmother on Mother's Day, that Mother's Day. And to the day she died, she used to say, "You didn't come see me on Mother's Day."
Yeah.
And it was all because of that oath.
Italian guilt. My mother gives me that too when I go for visit. Yeah.
So you know, you just repeat, and they burn the saint in your hand, and then you just roll it up, let it out, and then, you know, they prick your finger, they put some blood on it,
right,
and that's it. And then they give you a kiss on the cheek, and then they send you on your way.
Yeah. Now, is there a ceremony when you go from being a made member to a captain?
No, it's not a ceremony, but it's like a conversation. Like the boss will introduce you as so there was years ago, I was at a funeral with Genie, Gotti, and all of them, and they made this guy in Jersey a captain. They just promoted him to captain, and he came to the funeral, and they were just introducing him like they have an introduction for each other. Like when two wise guys meet, like there's always got to be a third party to introduce. You can't introduce yourself. You can't walk up to another wise, say, I'm straightened out. Right. It's supposed to come from another guy, and they say, you know, he's a friend of ours, and that's how I would know he's a wise guy. He's a friend of ours. And they did the same thing with a captain. They just said, you know, he's a capo regime now. So-and-so's a capo regime now. And they would introduce him as a captain to other wise guys. But there's no ceremony like getting made. Not to my knowledge, anyway.
Okay. Yeah. So when you were in Ozone Park, you got along well with John Gotti, even after the murder of Castellano?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got along great with him. He always looked out. Yeah, you know, I talk about it all the time. You know, I knew him since I'm a kid. I mean, I met him when I was 13 years old. My father knew him longer than that. My father knew him since he was a teenager when he first moved into East New York from the Bronx. Originally, he was from the Bronx, and then he moved into East New York, Brooklyn. So my father knew him since he was a kid. And I met him when I was 13 years old. I met him at the club, at the Bergen Hut Fish Club in Ozone Park. And he always looked out for me. I had a great relationship with him, always helped me, loved my mother, looked out, you know, my first wife. He loved my first wife, Alice. He knew our whole family from East New York, the Mayones. Yeah. I had a great relationship with him. He never yelled at me, never abused me, and I was in a lot of trouble all the time. he was good to me. You know, he always helped me, even when I was, you know, fucking around with the cocaine. You know, I had a cocaine problem. He never belittled me. He always looked out for me. And when I got out of treatment, you know, the guy bought me a car. Yeah, he was the boss. He was the boss of the, you know, I went to see him, and he told me, he took me outside, and he asked me, you know, what can I do for you? I don't want you getting stressed out, he told me.
Wow.
Yeah. And I
so when he was the boss of the Gambino,
he was the boss.
And
he was the boss.
He bought you a car. Okay.
He bought me a car, and he loaned me, and he gave me $2,000.
Wow. Okay, that's a good boss.
Yeah. Well, you know, I didn't look at him as my boss. You know, he was my friend. You know, he just treated, for some reason, him and I had like a bond. Like he for some reason, he just liked me. I guess, you know, and you know, he liked the fact that I was a convict, that I went to jail when I was a kid, at 23. Because a lot of guys, believe it or not, a lot of wise guys, mob guys, they never did a day in jail.
Wow.
For some reason, he would lean over to me and he would tell me, "You think these guys ever ate a fucking bologna sandwich in a bullpen? Like they don't, you know, like we had like a little, and then and he also liked that we were both Scorpios. Don't ask me why. I don't know why.
Oh, okay.
But his birthday is October 27th, and my birthday is October 29th.
Oh, okay.
So we were both Scorpios. So yeah, he always looked out for me. Oh, you know, always looked. We used to write letters to my family when he was away and I was away. And my father, I still have the letters. He write letters to my wife Alice. You know, give Anthony and Andy my love, and you know, he would write. You know, when he got arrested, he told this kid gets all bad breaks and. You know, yeah, so I had a great relationship with him. A lot of people want me to badmouth him and this and that, but you know what? Listen, he was what he was. He was a gangster, but, right. You know, he was good to me.
Mm-hmm. And what was your father's relationship with him like?
Well, when he was a kid, it was a little rocky because there was some friction between kids that were with my father, like Nicky Carrazza and them guys and John. They were like having, you know, beefs in the neighborhood. So there was a little friction, but there was always a lot of respect. They always respected my father. You know, my father was a gangster. They loved my father. When later on in life, they became very close. They had crazy conversations about murders and and no, they were very close. I think that's another reason why he always looked out for me, because he respected my father. He helped my father. My father was in jail with cancer. They paid $30,000 for the doctor to operate on him. He said, no friend of mine's going to die in jail if I can help it.
Right.
He always looked, he looked out for us when my mother got hit by my brother-in-law. No, they had a very good relationship.
Was he part of your father's crew?
No, he was with Charlie Wagons.
Okay.
John Gotti and my father were both proposed by Charlie Fatico.
Mm-hmm.
He was the main member of that family that proposed my father first, and then years later he proposed John Gotti. So more or less, they were sponsored by the same wise guy into that family.
Okay, and your father did become a captain. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right. All right. Yeah, you talked about your the problem with your brother-in-law and your mom. I think everybody saw Vlad TV, and that was probably like, it goes back to what we were saying before about how women really are into the bad boy thing to a fault, and that happened with your sister apparently.
Yeah. So my sister met this kid, Frankie, who I didn't know in the beginning. All I knew is like one day this Danny Marino, who was a captain in the Gambino family, came to see me and Tony Lee, and he told us, listen, your sister's dating this kid, Frankie. I'm telling you, tell her to stay away from him. He's bad news. He's a bad kid. He was partners with this other kid named Peter Sakara. They were killers. They were armored truck robbers. They did a bid for robbing armored trucks. They killed a few people in the neighborhood. They were just they were bad kids, but they were mobbed up. They knew the deal. They were around wise guys. I mean, they knew the score. They wanted to get straightened out. They were both Italian kids that wanted to get straightened out. Mm-hmm. And I told my sister, that I was told for you to stay away from this kid, and she didn't. She didn't stay away from him. Mm-hmm. And he was just a bad kid. And then things happened, and and eventually, he was murdered.
Yeah. I say this to I have nieces and my cousin. I said, there's a difference between, a bad kid and a guy who is very masculine, but is responsible.
Right.
There's a big difference, and you respect the person that is masculine, doesn't take shit, and is responsible, like somebody like you or your old man or so on and so forth, takes care of the family. But when you have somebody who's just, I think the story was he ran up a tab. Right. On was it your mom's? Right. Was it the baptism?
Yes. No. So what happened? First of all,
baby shower.
People
right?
Ask me. That's good what you said earlier. I just want to touch on that for a minute. Yes. People ask me all the time if I considered us bullies, and I didn't never. We were not bullies. Mm-hmm. We didn't bully people. We shook people down. We extorted people, but these people knew the deal. They were involved in the mob. We didn't just, shake down, whoever we did, whatever we did to, they knew the score. We weren't bullies. I didn't bully an innocent person. He knew the deal. He was told even by his own friends, listen, this is Fernandy's daughter. Watch, you don't go with her. Don't stay away from her. And he didn't listen. This guy went out with Sonny Francis's. This guy had a thing for wise guys' daughters and nieces, because I think he thought that was going to be a shield for him.
Yeah.
He went out with Danny Marino's niece. He went out with Sonny Francis's daughter, who eventually, I think she passed away. God rest her soul. She passed away from drugs. Michael's sister. So he was told. So what happened was my sister was pregnant, and my mother had a baby shower for her that she paid for in full. At the end of the night, the owner brought a $700 tab over to my mother and gave it to her. My mother says, what's this? I already paid the bill. He goes, your son-in-law was at the bar buying everybody drinks, and he told me to give you the tab. So now my mother pays it. She don't say nothing. She pays it. She goes home and she confronts him. Now, I lived upstairs from my mother at the time. I was in treatment. I was in Vermont. My wife, Alice, at the time, hears it. She runs down and she sees him, and he's choking my mother.
Mamma mia.
Floor. So she jumped on him. She scratched his face and she got him off her, and he pushed her and he ran out of the house. The next day when I called from the treatment center to find out how the party was, if everybody had a good time, she tells me what happened. I go, what, are you kidding me? So she told me what happened. So then when I got out of treatment, I went to see Tony Lee and I told him, listen, this guy hit my mother. And he goes, yeah, I know. I said, then what are we going to do? He goes, we're going to clip him. And that was the beginning.
He had, he couldn't have been that stupid that he didn't. He had to know that there were going to be repercussions. Unless he was just a dummy. I mean, how do you not? I mean,
well, he was, at this time now he's smoking crack, he's sniffing heroin.
Okay.
He's not in his right mind either. I would come in my house and my mother's VCR would be taken apart. And I go, what happened to your VCR? She goes, oh, Frankie took it apart last night because he would be all paranoid.
Yeah, so he was a piece of shit. He wasn't.
He was no good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my sister and my niece suffered that's collateral damage. So then I went to see Tony Lee, and he said what he said. Then I went to visit my father, and I told my father what happened, and and he okayed it, and then that was it. And then we went to John, and John okayed it, and then we did it.
That was it. Yeah. Yeah. And from what I understand, you didn't actually do the shooting. You?
No, I walked them in. I picked them up. I set him up. I told him that Tony, he was a thief. So we couldn't just do it in the street because he was a bad kid. He would have hurt one of us. We couldn't just roll up on him and start blasting away in the street. Right. So we had to get him to a place, keep him calm. And so I told him that Tony Lee, we knew Tony Lee had a score for him, a drug safe house in South Ozone Park where we think there's a lot of money, and he wants to explain it to you. So, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning and we'll go see Tony Lee. He goes, all right. So then that morning I picked him up and he came down and I wanted to make sure he had no weapons on him, but he didn't. He had shorts on and a t-shirt and shoes with no socks. So I knew he had no weapons on. It was in June. It was hot morning out.
Did he have Did he have decks on with no socks?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He had decks on. Yeah, he did.
Okay. All right,
yeah, he did. And he had shorts on and a t-shirt. So he got in my car. I kissed him hello. Talking, laughing. Keeping him calm. Not. And I drove him to the club, and then I walked him in, and Skinny Dom shot him.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, listen, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, man. You want to act the fool, you're going to pay consequences, especially when, you're around people like that. And it's, it is what it is, man. And I would feel bad for his wife, especially I would feel bad for your niece, his daughter, at the most. But a guy like that, I mean, if he's that much of a wild card, I mean, yeah. What can you do with him? No,
it is what it like. He knew the deal. Listen. I'll tell you two instances. So now, after I started cooperating with the government, and his partner Peter Sakara wound up cooperating with the government too, and gave up a lot of murders. The FBI agent told me one day I never realized how many murders your brother-in-law was in on. How many people that he killed with this Peter Sakara. And here I'll give you. So he knew the deal. A little while later, about a year or two later, my sister starts dating this kid, Chris. Mm-hmm. Just a kid from the neighborhood. He wasn't mobbed up. He had a drug issue. My sister by this time had a drug issue. This kid, Chris, was just a neighborhood kid, not mobbed up, legitimate kid that had a drug problem. Knew nothing about wise guys, knew nothing about the mob, just some jerky kid from the neighborhood. He hooks up with my sister. They wind up getting arrested. He steals a car. He's got a stolen credit card on him. They get pulled over. They get arrested, the two of them. Drug-related nonsense, So when I go visit I get her out of jail, no bail. I get her out. I go visit my father. Now, this is, Fat Andy, the great I am, Mm-hmm. So I go visit him, and I tell him what happened. I go, yeah, they got arrested with the credit cards, with the car, blah, blah, blah. So he looks at me and he goes to me, does this kid know she's my daughter? I said, Dad, he doesn't know nothing about why. He's a kid from the neighborhood. He's a drug addict. He don't know nothing about wise guys or mob or nothing. He goes, you don't? And he goes like this. He goes, you don't? Well, anyway, you know what you got to do here, right? So I looked at him. I go, I know what I got to do here. He goes, yeah, you know what you got to do here, right? I go, what are you fucking... You think I'm going to go kill this kid? Are you crazy?
Yeah,
I'm not killing this kid. He got mad at me.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
He got mad at me. He goes, I said, I'm not gonna, I said, what do you, I said, yeah, you know what we'll do? We'll kill everybody she goes with till she meets a brain surgeon.
Yeah, right.
I said, I'm not killing this kid. No, he really got mad at me. He was serious. He to the point where he said, don't worry, I'll take care of it myself. Don't worry about it. I'll take care. I don't need you to do nothing for me. I'll take care of it myself.
Yeah.
So now I leave the visit. I go back to Ozone Park. I sent for this kid. And I go, listen, Chris, you better run away because my father wants you gone.
Yeah.
So you better, this is the situation. I don't know if you know anything what's going on here, but you know her father's in jail, right? He goes, yeah, but he didn't know nothing about the mob. I said, well, you need to get out of here. And I never saw the kid again. I don't know, but no, years later, I get a letter from a guy that's in jail. And he says to me, listen, there's a kid, Chris, up here in the yard. And he's telling me that he dated your sister.
Oh my God.
So he was still alive, but he was in jail, the kid. Yeah.
Jeez, wow. What a story. It's crazy.
So,
right?
It's crazy. So, listen, so the bottom line is one guy knew the deal and one guy didn't. That's the difference.
Right.
That's now, if this kid, Chris, knew the deal, it might have been a different story. Maybe we would have clipped him.
Right.
But he didn't. So
yes. I hear what you're saying. Okay. All right. How many years did you serve in jail?
Altogether, a little less than 14 years.
Do you have any crazy jail stories? Was it really like Goodfellas where?
Well, yeah, for us, I mean, we ate good. We cooked our own food. We had hot plates, and we got the guys in the commissary ordered us some ordered special stuff. I have some stories like when I was in Attica. So I'll tell you. So when I was in Attica, I had a federal detainer on me. So I spent the year of 1998 in Attica. So there was Teddy Persico was up there. The kid Teddy, he's a captain in the Colombo family. Sally Dogs was up there. He was a captain in the Genovese family. And a couple of other wise guys and Italian guys from Ridgewood. They were all up in Attica. And I was there with them. And there was this guy there with us called Bruno Bats. This guy was doing life. This guy was humongous. I mean, he was like a bull, a murderer. He had a beard. They used to call him Bruno Bats because he was batshit crazy.
Right.
And he had life, but he was so crazy, but he was one of them really intelligent guys. Like he loved the Roman Empire. He literally taught himself how to speak fluent Latin.
Wow.
Like fluently, he spoke Latin.
Genius IQ.
Genius. Learn Shakespeare, word for word, recite. He would just start reciting Shakespeare. Knew it like frontwards and backwards, but batshit crazy. Wouldn't take showers. But he wouldn't take showers. Like he was just crazy.
All right.
But he used to call me Cousine.
Yeah,
and he used to stab, and he was dangerous. He stabbed a few guys. Everybody was afraid of him.
He was Italian?
He used to like me, Italian guy. Okay. He used to like from Brooklyn, but he used to call me Cousine. We worked together. He just liked me. I used to go with him to eat to the mess hall. We locked on the same tier. He was like 2 cells down. So, and we spent a lot of time together. He liked me. So now the wise guys come to me and they tell me, listen, this Bruno Bats, he stinks. They go, you got to talk to him and tell him to take a shower. I said, I got to tell him to take a shower? I said, you're the big gangster wise guy. You go tell him to take a shower. I go, no, listen, you got to tell him to take a shower. Because now this guy will stab you. He's crazy.
Yeah.
So I say, I got to tell him. So now I'm in work with him. I'm sitting down on the couch with him on the chairs. And I tell him, listen, Bruno, I got to talk to you about something. He goes, Cousine, what, anything? I go, listen, you respect me? He goes, yeah, I respect you, Cousine. You know what? I said, listen, you smell.
Oh.
So he looks at me. I go, and it's disrespectful to us.
Oh.
I says, you need to take a shower, Bruno. I says, if you respect us and you want us to respect you, you can't, you have to shower. So he looks at me dead serious, right? He looks at me and he goes to me, Cousine, I'm going to take a shower for you. But if any of these other fuckers ask me, I'm going to fucking stab them. Just like that. I go, Bruno, that's not a problem. I said, that's fine. And he got up and he went because we had showers in the maintenance shop and he went and he took a shower. And so those are little incidents we had in jail. And every Friday, he would go, they used to play tapes. And the whole prison, we had TVs in our cells in Attica, 13-inch TVs. And on Friday nights, they would pipe in videos. and he would go to the office and he would make them put on Spartacus because he loved Spartacus.
Oh, really?
The whole jail had to watch Spartacus.
That's hysterical. What year was this about?
1998.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So fast forward, and basically, you make a deal with the FBI, and as everybody knows on Vlad TV, it was very difficult for you to do that because of the life you grew up in and so on and so forth. But you kind of thought you didn't really have a choice anymore.
Yeah. So what happened was I got arrested in 2005 for the murder for a RICO. I was only home a year. And, at that point, I don't know, my father was dead. Tony Lee was dead. John Gotti was dead. Like I said, I got transferred to Nicky Carrazza. I was on the verge of getting straightened out, and so part of me wanted to get straightened out at that time. And part of me didn't want to get straightened out, but I didn't want to say no because I didn't want anybody to catch a delusion on me. So I was going to do it, and it got almost done except outside of the ceremony. So I got arrested and, nobody was looking out for me. I needed money for the lawyer, $25,000. I couldn't get any help. And I was just tired of it. I hit a bottom, like how much time am I going to do? It was just a different world. And I would pick up the phone to call and I would hang it up, and I would pick up the phone and I couldn't make the call to the government. I pick up the phone, hang it up, pick up the phone, hang it up. And I saw through my co-defendant meetings, like I was sort of getting thrown under the bus more or less. Like people were coming up with alibis, and like I would say, what about me? Oh, you're on your own. Like I was the last person with this guy. You know what I mean? Like, like everything points to me here.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I was going to say. In your defense, by the time 2004, 2005 got around, you weren't the only one. I mean, guys were ratting on each other like crazy.
Oh, yeah. That's how I got indicted. Guys cooperated and got me indicted.
Yeah, it wasn't like the 1950s where these guys died. Yeah.
So then what happened was I had some legal issues to go. So first I met this knockaround guy. Because I had a pass from my house. I was in the house arrest, and he told me like, well, he wasn't really he was like a legitimate guy, but he knew the deal. Like, he was on the fringes of the mob, but I knew him all my life. Like he was a very, very dear friend of mine. And he knew my father too well. And he told me, listen, you need to call the government. I said, what are you, crazy? I can't do that. I can't disrespect my father like that. He goes, listen, you did everything for your father. You killed a guy for your father. You did everything for your father. Your father's dead. You got to save yourself. Mm-hmm. But, and I still couldn't do it. Then what happened was I had some legal issues going that I needed some information to put in a motion. And I called, and my attorney friend of mine called up a big high-powered organized crime attorney that loved us. People didn't realize that my father was loved and people did like me. Was trying to help me, called up my co-defendants' attorneys for some help, and they turned this lawyer down. And said, no, we can't give you this because we're going to use this at trial. And this lawyer said, yeah, but this could help Anthony now get this dismissed. Okay. They said, yeah, but if we reveal it now, then we can't use it at trial. Yeah. And they said, yeah, but this doesn't do Anthony no good at trial. He needs it now for this motion. And they wouldn't give it to me. So this attorney called me and told me, listen, they're going to throw you under the bus. You need to call the government. The lawyer told me.
Yeah.
So then I hung up the phone. I paced the floors for like an hour, and then I went to sleep, and I woke up the next day and I still couldn't do it. I took the card. I had the FBI card, and my wife was going to work because I lived out in Colmac at the time, and she worked in Ridgewood. And I took the FBI card and I gave it to her. And I said, here, listen. I said, when you get to work today, call this number. And the guy that answers the phone, this guy, Jerry Conrad, tell him to come see me. And she went to work and she called them up. And that afternoon, they came to see me and I cooperated.
And that led to you getting released at what year did you get released?
Yeah, so then I cooperated. They kept me in my house for about a month. Then they took me out of my house. They brought me to a safe house in Jersey. And then I had to go into court, to a closed courthouse, locked courtroom, and I had to plead guilty to the murder. I pled guilty to the murder in 2005, maybe 2006, the beginning of 2006, I'm not too sure. The end of 2005, the beginning of 2006, I pleaded guilty to the murder, to the RICO. And then I got sentenced for it in 2014.
Okay. All right. And you got out at what year?
I got arrested and I got out on bail like 2 weeks later.
Oh, okay.
And then I was out. I was in the street the whole time. Then I went into the witness protection program for a little over a year. And then I signed myself out of that program and I went back. I was living in Michigan. And then from Michigan, I moved. And that's when I went back to school and started working in treatment.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you are you're a counselor. Treatment counselor.
Yeah, now I'm a behavioral health technician now. I went to school for counseling. I was a counselor for a couple of years, and then I switched to then that place went out of business, and then the criteria changed, and now I'm a behavioral health technician. I work in a detox now.
No, that's okay. So you literally changed your life around.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Without a doubt. I went back to school. I became a counselor. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I could do things now that surprise me. I could write a biopsychosocial. I can't even spell biopsychosocial, but I could write one. Yeah.
So, I go on vacation with my wife, and they say, "Oh, you grew up in Brooklyn. You're from New York, Staten Island, whatever," and they all think, "Oh, the mafia in New York," and you know how it is when you go on vacation, you meet somebody from the Midwest or the West Coast, and the truth is, I mean, I'm sure there's an element still left, right? I'm sure there's always going to be something still left, but my opinion is that there's really nothing left. But what is your opinion?
My opinion is that it's never going to go away. But it's not what it was. I don't think I don't think that they're going to commit any kind of act of violence anytime soon. I don't know what these kids, these young Italian kids in their 20s, what they do. They're all on their phones. They're all on their phones on Instagram and Facebook. I don't know how they're going to get straightened out on Instagram. Yeah. I don't even know how they make money today. Everything's online. All these apps, everything is legal. Sports betting is legal. The lottery is legal. Everything's legal. You got 900 places giving out. I get things every day in the mail. I'm pre-approved for thousands and thousands of dollars every day.
Right.
It definitely is not what it was. Like, am I concerned for my safety? I don't think there's anybody. Don't get me wrong. Listen, there's guys out there that I know personally that are capable of killing somebody, but are they going to come and kill us? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And I'm going to say they aren't. I'm not going to say I don't think so. I'm going to say they aren't, because it brings too much heat. And I don't think they're cut from the same paper. I mean, my generation was probably the last generation that had a breeding ground.
Without a doubt.
Right. I mean, Gen X, I mean, the millennial kid, maybe they might grow up in Long Island. Yeah, they might grow up in Jersey.
And they're all middle class, higher up middle class. They're not struggling for money. They're not from the ghetto. Yeah. You know what I mean? Listen, look at that guy with the Columbos. He was on the lam, the underboss. He had to surrender because his son put him on TikTok.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's just a different world out there. I mean, they're still straightening people out, from what I understand. From the few people I talk to in my neighborhood, they'll tell me, "Oh, this guy got straightened out. That guy got straightened out." But it's nothing what it used to be. I mean,
it doesn't seem like it's worth anything.
There's cameras in the doorbells. How are you going to do anything?
Right. It doesn't seem when somebody's strained, it doesn't seem like it's worth anything. Because I don't know guys specifically, but I know of them, and they get straightened out, and they have to have full-time jobs.
Yeah.
So what?
And I don't think it's the respect level anymore from the people in the neighborhood about getting trained out. Who's wise guys? When I was a kid, they got respect.
Yeah.
Even from other ethnic groups. Now there's no more respect no more.
No, there really isn't.
You got the Russians out there pushing them out, the Albanians pushing them out.
Right.
It's a different world now.
Yeah, it's completely different. And, like I said, tradition is lost. Guys like that used to protect the neighborhood. God forbid, a stranger that nobody knew was in. I mean, I had this conversation. I was on a podcast doing an interview. And I had this conversation. I said, I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that it's the truth. If you weren't from the neighborhood, especially if you were dark skinned, if you were Spanish, if you were black, and you walked through the neighborhood, you took your life in your hands. Yeah. Because they wanted no strangers in that neighborhood, right? Nothing. And even the girls, like Sammy the Bull tells a story about when he had his club. Yeah, I think it was on 18th Avenue in Brooklyn. I might be wrong. But the girls would walk on their side of the street because they knew nobody would bother them.
Nobody bothered them. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I had a girl that I went to college she went to college downtown Brooklyn, I think to St. Joseph. and we were dating, and she had told me, she lived in Bensonhurst. At this point, I was in Staten Island. I said, this guy follows me home every day. I don't know who he is. He follows me home every day. I'm just coming from school to go back home. And she went into one of the cafes on 18th Avenue. And he said, look, she was scared because the guy was following her. And the guys go outside and he goes, oh, okay, I know who that is. Don't worry, he's not going to bother you anymore. And she don't know what happened after that, but he never bothered her again after that. Yeah, he never followed her.
That's how it used to be. Yeah, that's how it was.
Yeah, and it's not like that anymore. And I think
and there's no more clubs. I mean, the wise guys now, they're not in the neighborhoods like they used to be. Like in my neighborhood, Ozone Park, there was a club on every corner. Now there's no more social clubs. There's no, I don't even know where they're socializing, where they're hanging out. It's just like the way I was raised in the mob and the things I did in the mob are a thing of the past. They don't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even like the way I earned a living. And I made a lot of money. We made a lot of money. We couldn't do any of that today.
Right.
None of that could have been done today with the cameras and the surveillance and the internet, and none of that could have been accomplished today. And the informants, do you know how many informants, listen, and this, I hope kids hear this. The FBI know everything. Everything. When I had profits, they would tell me things that I forgot, and I would almost fall out of the chair. Oh my God, I forgot all about that. Right. They know everything. There's more people, more CIs walking around right now on their payroll, standing next to all these wise guys that they don't even have a clue who they are. It's over. Yeah. They know everything. And any kid today that wants to get involved in the mob is nuts. It's not like TV. It's not The Sopranos.
Yeah, no, and I don't think a lot of kids want to get. I think a lot of kids want to actually do the social media thing, the Paul Logan thing.
I hope so.
Yeah, the Paul Logan or the what was it, Fresh and Fit, and all these kids that are making a lot of money on the podcast. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I do it. But
yeah, me too.
So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to plug everything that you're doing now. But the one question is, when guys started going on, there's one thing about being an informant and serving time and so on and so forth. But when guys really started with Michael Franchese, when he started going on, VladTV, and he went on, what was the other one? Patrick Bet David, who I think that guy is fantastic. I love watching his podcast. Value Tamer, that's the name of it. Yeah. What was the first take on it? I mean, at this point, I know that everything was kind of like falling apart, but the fact that he would just come out there and spill his gun. I mean, now it's very common. Now everybody's doing it, But what was your take on it at that point?
Well, when he first started doing it, I was still involved in the street. Mm-hmm. So we looked down on it. Mm-hmm. I looked down on it at that point. I looked down on it. Him, not only, not him personally, just on anybody to do that. To us, that was like, giving it up. You know what I mean? Like, you're not supposed to do that. Like the Gotti, growing up Gotti, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to do that. Their father would have never allowed them to do it. If John was alive there, he would have never allowed that.
Right.
It was frowned upon. Mm-hmm. Then when I cooperated, and then I saw like Michael is sincere and he wants to get a message out there. You know what I mean? I didn't frown upon it. I thought it was, it's a good thing. If we could now get a message out there about our life, if our lives could help somebody and along the way, we could help ourselves, why not?
Right.
But when I was in the street, it's frowned upon. And even today, for guys that are in the street, they probably frown upon me and Michael and, whoever, Johnny A-Light, all these guys, whoever's doing Bobby Louisi, all these people that cooperated are doing these shows now. The guys in the street are probably frowning upon it, think, it's a form of being a rat, really. That's what they look, that's how they look at it. But so I frowned upon it when I was in that mindset. But now, listen, Michael, I love Michael. He's great at it.
Yeah, no, him and Sammy the Bull are probably the most successful at it, Yeah. I didn't realize, because like I said, I'm from the same neighborhood as Sammy. I didn't realize how much he owned of the neighborhood until I started listening to his podcast. I'm like, really? That was his place? And even my brothers were like, I can't believe that was his place. It's a different, and there's a lot of guys that want to put out a good message like yourself, like Michael Franchese. But I think there's a lot of guys that do it because, hey, look, fucking, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. I want the money. There probably a lot of them like the clout still.
Yeah. Listen, a lot of them are ego driven. A lot of them are full of shit.
Oh God.
You know what I mean? A lot of them, are making shit up or photoshopping themselves into stories because they know a story. So they're putting themselves into the story,
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason why Michael is doing well and Sammy's doing well and I'm starting to do well is because we're telling the truth.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, listen, Michael tells the truth. Michael is very honest. He's very intelligent. Yeah. Very intelligent guy. And he's got a big heart. He's a good guy. And that's how it comes across. And I think for myself, I think my honesty and my sincerity is coming across.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
Listen, it's like when I decided to cooperate, guys decide to cooperate and they still want to commit crimes.
Yeah. Right.
If I was going to still commit crimes, I wouldn't have cooperated. So now if I'm going to do this, I'm going to tell the truth, no matter how hard it is or how bad it may sound or how terrible the things are that I did. I'm going to lay it all out there and let people make their own decisions. This is what it is, And
the majority of people, I would assume, but you could tell me, respect that. Or do you get more respect or do you get more hate on social media?
I get more respect. The comments I get are off the charts. I mean, 90% of the comments are all great, positive comments. It's amazing the messages I get blow me away. It's going really well. It's going in the right direction, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, very cool. So now you have your own podcast, right?
Yes, I have my own podcast, Reformed Gangsters. I also have an event coming up on October 29th, a Halloween party, and it's also my birthday, October 29th. Nice. And then on the 30th, I'm going into the studio to do a podcast. We're selling tickets for both the events on my website, Reformed Gangsters.
Okay, Reformed Gangsters is the website?
Yeah, reformedgangsters.com. Okay. And also, I'm having two guests, and I just want to let everyone know who the guests are. One is Leo Rossi, the actor and producer. Okay. And he was in Analyze This. He was in Halloween 2. He wrote the Gotti script, Leo Rossi. He's a great character actor. And also Rita Giganti is going to be there, the Vincent DiCin's daughter.
Yes. Yeah. Rita is a tremendous person.
Yes.
I actually had the privilege of interviewing her 6 or 8 months ago.
Well, you met her at my event, didn't you?
Yes, and I did. I came to your event, and when you guys did the podcast sit down together, which was fantastic. It really was. And because I love hearing about you guys were telling about the old stories about the old Italian neighborhood and how and when you grow up like that, because like that was my childhood too.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear because all those traditions are everything's falling apart.
The neighborhoods are gone. There's no more neighborhoods.
Yeah, right. It's all. Like you said, it's all gone. It is what it is. There's no more Italian community, or Black community or Hispanic. Everything is kind of just
everything's twisted.
Yeah, everything's. I don't know if it's good or bad, but I know it's just different. That's what I know.
Different than us. Yes, yeah. And so the tickets are all on the website.
Reformedgangsters.com. Reformedgangsters.com. I'm going to make sure that is on the description so people just click. And your podcast and YouTube channel. Yes, is also
Reformed Gangsters.
Okay, also Reformed Gangsters. And it's on YouTube and it's on any other platform?
It's on Patreon. What do you call that?
Patreon.
Yeah. Okay. I always get tongue-tied.
Yeah. Okay. So it's on YouTube and Patreon. All right, cool. So I'm going to make sure that's all in the description so people can go.
All right.
And listen, Anthony, I just want to thank you very much. It was a fantastic interview. I really respect you. I respect your honesty and your opinions.
Thank you.
And I really much love, much respect, and more success to you. Really.
Thank you. You too. Maybe I'll see you at the end of the month.
Yeah. I'll definitely check it out. Check it out.
All right.
All right, Anthony. Thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.